Hey, everybody. Today we're here with Brock Henderson. Brock is an independent game developer, president of the Christian Game Developer Conference, and a servant at heart. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today is how to lead by modeling servant leadership in your organization. Brock, tell us a little bit more about yourself, about what you're doing these days.
Yeah. Like you said, I'm an independent game developer, and I'm the head of game development at a ministry called Salvation Poem. And I also have a small studio called Pixel Pug, where we focus on creating games that spark community.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I've often dreamed about being a game developer. I even started something a few years ago. Still, nobody has done this idea yet. So maybe you and I need to talk about how to develop that game out. Kind of
that'd be awesome.
Almost like a Pokemon Go, but with other things besides Pokemon. And so, yeah, we'll talk later.
Awesome.
Brock, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We'll talk about game development, maybe, but mostly we're going to be talking about servant leadership, which is kind of the opposite of what a lot of people think of when they think of leadership. Like traditional leadership is closer to like management, top-down decisions. Servant leadership is based more on building a culture of trust and respect and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to talk about that here in just a few more minutes too. But before we get too far into that, Brock, what's a book that you've been reading lately that made an impact on you?
Let's see. Right now, I'm finishing up Difficult Conversations because I want to be a better leader and a better communicator. And yeah, that's been a tremendously valuable book.
Awesome. I've actually read Crucial Conversations
Mm-hmm.
in the past. I wonder, I haven't heard of Difficult Conversations. So that's probably worth a read too. But you're right, that anything that helps us to be willing to have conversations that are maybe a little bit more contentious, a little bit less on the happy side, if we can have the courage to have those conversations, then we can actually help people flourish incredibly. If we just leave people where they are, they'll just keep on dwindling. So yeah, I like that book. I'm going to check it out.
Awesome.
And Brock, so as part of our show, our tradition on this show is to remind everybody just how human our guests are and how human I am. And so, yeah, buckle your seatbelt or step into my confession booth, more like it. So what's an embarrassing mistake that you've made as a tech leader, Brock?
Oh, so many. I guess instead of focusing on a mistake, I'd like to tell an embarrassing story. Probably the most embarrassing story as just a person in tech, a developer, is one time I totally bombed an interview, a tech interview. Because I come from a design background and I learned programming on my own and did a bunch of courses and different things, but like I never took like an algorithms class or some different core CS things that would be really helpful in a tech interview. And I've been an entrepreneur and made my own jobs and worked for friends and stuff. So I came into this interview looking for like a senior position, and I don't know if you've ever had like a nightmare where you're, show up to school and you don't have your homework done, you're failing out, or you're in your underwear or whatever. But it's one of those cringe nightmares you might have had growing up. This was that scenario. I wanted to just shut the computer down just mid interview because I was bombing so hard.
What were they asking you, like system design questions or like engineering principles?
Yeah, there were just some like, leak code questions and, optimizing loops and different things and things, I should have been prepared for. I just wasn't. And it just took me off guard, and then it just got worse and worse from there. So I thought we were going to, write some code and do some things like that, but it was kind of
like solve some real problems.
Yeah.
Man, I actually don't fault you at all. That might have felt embarrassing at the time, but I have a feeling that just wasn't the right place for you in years past. And this might be my embarrassing moment. Maybe in years past, I was trying to find efficient ways to hire developers. Right. And when you're vetting a lot of developers, you've got to kind of do some things to that you don't like to try to filter the list down. And so I actually sent hundreds of developers to an automated coding test that was algorithm based, where they were having to optimize loop and stupid things like that, things that don't actually solve real world problems for the majority of the time. And so I was using that to filter out potentially hundreds of very talented developers just so that I could get a smaller list that I could interview, and just like for the sake of efficiency. And that's just stupid. I have since repented and I don't do that anymore. I vet developers with more human methods now. But yeah, I don't fault you at all for bombing that interview. I think that it was probably the right thing that should have happened. Sorry you had to endure that though.
Oh, it was a good life lesson and revealed a bunch of blind spots as well. So yeah.
Cool. So we're talking about servant leadership today. And though a lot of people they might have heard of it and they may have an idea of what it is, they may not really know what servant leadership is, what it's about. So tell us real quick, Brock, what is servant leadership?
It's a leadership style that kind of puts it's a heart posture, I would say, that puts other people above yourself. So your colleagues and coworkers and your employees, you are leading in a way that elevates them instead of just focusing on yourself and the organization.
So just because I want to really help people understand what's going on with servant leadership, I have a feeling that somebody right now is listening and hearing what you just said, and they may think that servant leadership is just about trying to make everybody happy. And that might be a byproduct, I think, of servant leadership sometimes. And happiness, there's nothing wrong with happiness, but this podcast is all about human flourishing, and human flourishing does not always mean happiness. Like you can be happy and completely going down in flames, but you can be flourishing as a human, but having plenty of times in your life when you're uncomfortable, kind of like that oyster that's producing a pearl. And so tell me, Brock, from your perspective, what does servant leadership have to do with human flourishing?
I think it has to do all of it. I mean, I think at the heart of it, you are seeing the whole person and you want them to flourish in all areas of their life, not just work, not just personal. And servant leadership is about putting them and empowering them so that they can flourish in their environments.
So give us some examples. How are you currently modeling servant leadership in your day-to-day?
Yeah. So as a game developer, I'm the head of game development at Salvation Poem. And we're developing a game right now called Clayfire. And I'm pretty much the primary developer. I work with designers and artists and audio people and writers. And the cool thing is that in my role I'm kind of like the glue, right? We're bringing all those things together to help create this experience. So when I think about my role as a servant leader in that, is that how am I empowering these different groups to do their best work? So for example, the art team works in like Photoshop and Clip Studio, this program where they are very effective in drawing and creating the assets. And I need to work with them to create a pipeline that makes it as simple as possible for them to bring the art into Unity. We're developing the game in Unity. So that's one example. The other example is I work with designers all the time. Now they do have tech skills, but we would rather not have them having to rely on that. So I spend a lot of time trying to understand the way that they want to work and what would be the most efficient ways that I can expose the data and properties within Unity so they can iterate quickly. So a lot of my time is spent figuring out and understanding the best way that I can implement something for the way that they want to work with it. So it's not about me. It's not about how I think about the problem or how I would like to set it up, but it's all focused on them and empowering them to work as quickly and with as much freedom as possible.
Yeah, I can see that one way that you are working is in handoffs and triggers. I'm doing some of that in my team right now, where we're talking about processes of where one person is doing this work over here and another person is doing this work over here, and this person is ready for or waiting for something to be completed by person A. So person B, we've figured out, needs to tell person A how they want to receive that work.
Yeah.
What are the inputs and outputs? What do they expect? What's the format that they expect it to come in? And we've discovered in our own team that attention to triggers and handoffs is really helping both sides to flourish more.
Yeah.
Because they have a say in how they receive information. It's aligned with how they want to work, how they work best as a person. So I can see how in your team that's probably bringing out some great outcomes.
Yeah. And the faster that we can iterate, the better the end product's going to be. So we focus a lot on that iteration time, because game development's a lot about exploring a problem space rather than quite knowing ahead of time what the problem is. So,
yeah, in software development, especially in the world where I was brought up, there's this principle. I can't remember which principle it is. It's going to be some like Demeter principle or something like that. But it's tell, don't ask. And that's more of an autocratic. If you apply that to leadership, that's the traditional format.
Sure.
Tell, don't ask. And what you're getting at, it's actually better and helps your team to flourish more if you ask.
Yeah.
Instead of telling.
Yeah, for sure. I think people think differently about things and they work differently. And, as long as we're all going in the same direction, I think that's all that really matters in the end. There's definitely room for people's individual personalities and quirks and stuff. It doesn't have to be authoritarian always, right? Like we just need to be headed in the same direction.
Yeah. So Brock, you just personally, why did you choose servant leadership over more traditional models? I mean, I know you probably read countless books on how to lead people and how to get the best out of them. And most of them seem to have kind of a very traditional autocratic bent. So why would you choose servant leadership?
Great question. For me, I think it comes back to my faith. We see that I'm a Christian, and we see that Jesus, this is how he served. He was a preeminent example of that. But even if you're not a believer like me, this is the best form of leadership, and you see it over and over again. And writers like Simon Sinek in the book Leaders Eat Last explores this in detail. And it's the form of leadership that builds trust, that builds healthy work environments, that builds culture. These are the types of leaders that you want to serve, you want to be around.
Yeah.
They're the ones that that they are putting everything on the line for you, and they care about you ultimately. So
yeah. And you're right. You don't have to be religious to just look at the history and see that Jesus had something going for him. People, just in the historic record, we can see that people were flocking to him left and right. I mean, he had thousands of people following him as he would walk from place to place. People were hanging on his every word, and he definitely led in a very servant way. And again, you don't have to be religious to be interested in this kind of stuff. There's this one story in the Bible where Jesus he gets down on the floor and wraps himself in a towel and starts cleaning the feet of his followers. And it's a powerful image of servant leadership where, yes, he was absolutely the boss of his group. Absolutely. But he he was willing to show them some humility and get down on the floor and start wiping their nasty feet off. So I don't know that as a leader, I need to be getting down and cleaning the feet of my employees, because that would probably be an HR problem anyway, in this day and age. But I can take the examples from leaders like Jesus and be a servant.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up. Is there any kind of, like, outside of something that's motivated by your faith and just trying to be good to people, are there other benefits to servant leadership that people should be looking for? Other outcomes? I imagine that in some way productivity is going to get a boost.
Yeah, I think productivity. I think your overall work culture is going to be a huge boost. I think the end product also is way better in the end, right? Like, if you take this concept of caring about the other person and wanting good for them, like, ultimately, as we're creating software, our software is going to touch, thousands or millions of people's lives in a way that's either going to be beneficial to them or potentially detrimental. We all have examples of software that we wished we didn't have to use for various reasons, right? Because there's annoying things, there's things that are negative in our life. But on the flip side, we also can create things that genuinely impact people's lives in a very positive way. So that's kind of how I think about it all. It's just loving people through all the interactions, right? Jesus gave this example of loving your neighbor as yourself. So I think about that a lot. And so my neighbor in the work setting is often my team and my company. And then if we look at it as concentric circles, as we expand out, then we have, like, the products that we're making that touch people's lives as well. And so that's kind of how I just think about all of it, is just loving and caring people and being a good neighbor to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So why aren't more leaders servant leaders?
Great question. One, I think it's uncomfortable, because you have to make yourself vulnerable, right? You are acting in compassionate and empathetic ways with people. And especially in tech, people sometimes struggle with the human side of it, right? There's a gravity towards a lot of tech because, we're introverts and maybe we're awkward and different things. And so the tech kind of comes easy. The people part is hard. So I think it's probably amplified within tech. But yeah, it's hard. Sometimes it's slower. We have to slow down and see the whole person and meet them where they are, and a more difficult path.
Yeah. I would also say that servant leadership is kind of like a long game play. And it takes a little bit of, dare I say, faith, because the results are not guaranteed. And you almost have to want servant leadership regardless of the results. You almost have to want to be kind to people and ask people for their opinions and want flourishing regardless of whether or not you're going to get a payoff or return on your investment. So that might be another reason why some people don't just fall into this very good pit. It's a very good thing, but people don't fall into it maybe because it's a long game and it takes a little bit of faith to want to go down this road.
Yeah, I can see that.
So when tech leaders actually do want to model servant leadership, they're trying to make this move from traditional to a more servant leader model. What do you think tech leaders often overlook?
Well, I think one thing that people can do is it can be forced or canned. What we're ultimately talking about here is a heart posture, right? That you need to genuinely care about the people that you're working with and the people, under you if you're in a leadership position. And, we all have been in circumstances where people have asked us a question And, like, how are you doing? Oh, fine. They didn't really want to, hear the truth about how you're doing. They just wanted to do the formality, the social construct of that whole thing. So I would work on slowing down and making sure that we give breathing room for connecting with people on a human basis, right? There's leaving time at the beginning of a meeting to just small talk and ask people how their week is going, and is there anything that they're struggling with. So I think we oftentimes kind of try to shoehorn in that stuff, and we don't have the actual time that's needed. So like I said, it can be forced, it can be canned, it can feel like maybe even inappropriate at times.
Yeah. It's almost like me trying to go to London and sit in a meeting with a client and try to use a British accent. And it's kind of, that's not my native accent. No. I may have heard it a few times on movies. I think it sounds like this. And so if I start trying to use a British accent among people from that live in that culture that actually have that accent nailed, I'm just going to look fake. Yeah. And it's going to sound kind of funny, and it's not going to really work. And yeah, I think that would be kind of like what it is if you try to be a servant leader, but you don't actually have a heart for people. It really is a heart posture thing. It's not just something you can squeeze out. Yeah.
You can't, what do you think? If you fake it, people are going to know.
Yeah. So, okay. What would be better though? Somebody that is just, going to do everything by the book, traditional leadership, autocratic. They're basically going to dictate everything, versus somebody that is trying to shoehorn and somebody that is trying to just implement the systems without actually having the heart to back it up. Which is better? Which would you rather have?
Personally, I guess I would rather have just all business and that kind of rigid structure. If people are going to fake it, like I hate fake people.
Yeah. And it's kind of like somebody trying to implement agile in an inherently waterfall organization. It's, you might implement some of the systems, some of the ceremonies, but in the end, it's still a horrible situation, or maybe even worse, because it's kind of like one side is lying to the other side. And so, yeah, I'm with you. It'd be so much better just to have the full on traditional autocratic leadership style, because at least then I won't get tricked into working for them, or at least then I know where everybody stands. But when somebody's trying to kind of shoehorn a thing that doesn't really flow out of our hearts, it is just going to be disastrous. It's going to feel bad, look bad.
Yeah. And I would say that it's not, this approach is, even if you're not a leader, you can lead with empathy and compassion, no matter what your title is, right? And that ultimately can create a culture from the bottom up, and maybe the leader will eventually adopt.
I've never seen that happen, but I would like to think it's possible. It does sound nice. I've been on the other side of that, man, so many times, and where the team underneath, especially with agile transformations and things, the team underneath is trying to convince everybody else to get right. And it hasn't worked out so far, but like I said, I hope that it can be done just for the sake of people.
Yeah.
Brock, tell me about one thing you think tech leaders should do tomorrow to start promoting team flourishing.
Schedule time to check in with the people on your team. Put it on the calendar, make it part of just what you do. It can just be a small check-in, and I would say that it'd be focused on just them as a person. I guess within a whole sphere of work, they're a person in the work environment, right? Like, the more holistically that we can view people and understand how it's all connected, like a person's work life is connected to their personal life, and their personal life is brought into their work life. And so all that affects each other. And when we think and talk to people and the way that we treat people, we need to be holistic with it. So yeah, start by checking in, just regularly checking in, and take a valid interest and curiosity in your teammates.
Yeah, I like that. So if anybody out there that's listening that's not yet doing these kinds of like one-on-ones or check-ins, just right away, right now, stop everything you're doing, set a recurring meeting on your calendar for each one of your direct reports, and start getting to know them, get to know their hopes and dreams. Maybe don't even talk about business, just talk about them, their growth, their families, and give them a chance to let you get to know them.
Another super simple thing that we've been implementing is just like in Slack, you can have an icon and an emoji, basically just like telling your mood. And that just kind of gives people just a heads up into your world. If you're feeling stressed or anxious about something or, different things, it just gives people a little bit more information, into the context of what's happening, and people can check in with you and see if there's anything they can do to help. And yeah, it just makes a much better team.
Man, emojis have saved my butt more than I can even count. Where I maybe said something in a chat that was just a little bit edgy, or it could have come off as a little bit maybe Byron was upset about something, but then I can put a little smiling face next to it, and it just softens the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then the few times when I said something that I thought was just funny, but somebody else might have taken it wrong, and I didn't use an emoji, oh my goodness, slap in the face. So yeah, I agree with you. Good advice. So Brock, how can people connect with you?
Let's see. If you want to know more about me, I have a website, brockhenderson.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's the best way.
Awesome. We'll have links to those in the show notes. Brock, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great discussion. It's going to help a lot of people, and can't wait for the next time.